The Love We Built. Ryan strolled through the bustling city streets, his headphones blasting his favorite playlist. He loved the energy of downtown, the way people rushed past with purpose. As he turned the corner toward his favorite coffee shop, he collided with someone, spilling their drink. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," he exclaimed. The girl he'd bumped into laughed, brushing coffee off her coat. "It's fine, no big deal," she said, her smile lighting up her face. Ryan felt awkward, but charmed. "Let me buy you another," he offered. She hesitated, then nodded. "Sure, why not? I'm Jasmine, by the way." Inside the cafe, Ryan learned that Jasmine was a photographer, capturing the city's chaos through her lens. She showed him a few pictures on her phone, vivid snapshots of ordinary moments turned magical. "You have an eye for beauty," Ryan said. She blushed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. They exchanged numbers before parting, and Ryan couldn't stop thinking about her. She was unlike anyone he'd met, confident, creative, and full of life. That night, as he lay in bed, he texted her, "Hey, still owe you for ruining your coat. Coffee again tomorrow?" She replied almost instantly, "Deal." Ryan and Jasmine's connection deepened over time. They spent evenings wandering through the city, laughing at street performers and debating the best food trucks. Jasmine often snapped candid photos of Ryan, saying he had the perfect face for her portfolio. He'd laugh it off, secretly thrilled by her attention. One day, as they sat on a park bench, Jasmine handed him a photograph. It was a black and white portrait of him looking thoughtful, unaware she'd taken it. "You caught me off guard," Ryan said, studying the picture. "That's when people are most honest," Jasmine replied. "When they're not posing." Ryan felt his feelings for Jasmine growing stronger with every moment they shared. She had a way of making him feel seen, like he mattered in a world that often felt too big. One evening, as they watched the sunset from a rooftop, he blurted out, "I think I'm falling for you." Jasmine turned to him, her eyes wide. For a moment, she said nothing, then smiled softly. "Ryan, you're amazing," she began. "But there's something I need to tell you." His stomach nodded. "What is it?" he asked, bracing himself for the unknown. "It's complicated," she said quietly. Ryan tried not to panic as Jasmine explained. "There's someone else. But it's not what you think. We're not together, but he's still a part of my life." Ryan felt his heart sink. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I was scared," she admitted. Jasmine's revelation hung in the air between them, heavy and unresolved. Ryan didn't know how to process it. "I need time to think," he said finally, standing up. Jasmine nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I understand," she whispered. "I just hope you'll give me a chance to explain." Days passed, and Ryan couldn't shake the confusion swirling in his mind. He missed Jasmine but felt betrayed by her secrecy. "Maybe I rushed into this," he thought, pacing his apartment. Still, his heart ached for her. Finally, he decided he needed answers and texted her to meet. When they met, Jasmine seemed nervous but determined. "The other person I mentioned, it's my twin brother, Max," she began. Ryan blinked, caught off guard. "Your brother?" he echoed. "Yes," she said. He's been in trouble for years. Addiction, debt, you name it. I've been helping him get back on his feet. Ryan's relief was immediate, but tinged with guilt. Why didn't you just tell me that? He asked. Jasmine sighed. Because I didn't want you to see me differently. My life isn't perfect, Ryan. I didn't want my baggage to scare you away. Her vulnerability softened something in him. Ryan reached for her hand. Jasmine, everyone has baggage. It doesn't change how I feel about you. She looked at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of the misunderstanding lifting. Ryan felt closer to her than ever. Over the next few weeks, Ryan met Max and saw the bond he shared with Jasmine. Max was rough around the edges, but clearly trying to turn his life around. You've got a good sister, Ryan told him one day. Max nodded, smiling. Yeah, I do. Don't mess it up. Ryan and Jasmine's relationship grew stronger as they navigated the challenges together. They learned to lean on each other, sharing their fears and dreams openly. Jasmine continued to take stunning photographs, often using Ryan as her muse. He found himself falling more in love with her every day. One night, as they walked along the river, Ryan stopped and turned to Jasmine. You've changed my life, he said. I want to be with you no matter what. Jasmine smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. I feel the same way, she said. They kissed under the city lights. Life wasn't always perfect, but Ryan and Jasmine faced it together. They found joy in the little things, a shared laugh, a quiet moment, an unplanned adventure. Through it all, they learned that love isn't about perfection, but about choosing each other, flaws and all, every single day. Ryan and Jasmine began spending more time with Max, helping him through his struggles. Max often joked about how they were his personal cheerleaders, but deep down, Ryan could see the gratitude in his eyes. Jasmine seemed happiest when her brother was making progress. Ryan admired her strength even more. One evening, Max invited them to a small art show in a quiet gallery. He had started painting as part of his recovery, and this was his first time displaying his work publicly. Jasmine was thrilled and hugged him tightly. I'm so proud of you, she said, tears in her eyes. The gallery was filled with soft music and warm light. Ryan and Jasmine wandered from piece to piece, each one showing Max's journey from darkness to hope. One painting stopped Ryan in his tracks. It was of Jasmine, her face glowing as she smiled. You're his anchor, Ryan whispered to her. Jasmine wiped a tear from her cheek, squeezing Ryan's hand. He's mine too, she said. When Max saw them standing by the painting, he walked over sheepishly. It's not perfect, but I wanted to show how much she's done for me, Max said. Ryan clapped him on the shoulder. It's perfect. After the show, the three of them went out for dinner at a small diner Max liked. They laughed and joked, feeling lighter than they had in a long time. Ryan realized how much he cared for Max too. It wasn't just about Jasmine anymore. They had become a family. As their lives settled into a new rhythm, Ryan found himself thinking about the future. He wanted to share everything with Jasmine, but he worried if it was too soon. One morning as they lay in bed, he turned to her. Where do you see us in a few years? He asked. Jasmine smiled, her eyes half closed. Hopefully still like this, she said. Happy, together, and maybe with a dog. Ryan laughed, pulling her closer. "I can live with that," he said, kissing her forehead. He felt a sense of peace, knowing they both wanted the same things. One sunny afternoon, as they walked through the park, Ryan noticed Jasmine seemed distracted. "What's on your mind?" he asked. She hesitated, then stopped walking. "I got an offer to work on a big photography project," she said. "It's in another city, and it could last 6 months. Ryan's heart sank. "That's amazing, Jasmine," he said, masking his disappointment. "You've worked so hard for this." She searched his face, worry in her eyes. "I don't want to leave you, Ryan. But this is the kind of opportunity I've dreamed about." Ryan nodded, forcing a smile. "We'll figure it out." The next few weeks were bittersweet as they prepared for Jasmine's departure. They promised to call and visit each other as much as possible, but the thought of being apart weighed on them. The night before she left, Ryan surprised her with a small photo album. "To remember us," he said. Jasmine flipped through the pages, smiling at the pictures he'd chosen, snapshots of their favorite moments together. "This is perfect," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm going to miss you so much." Ryan held her close, feeling the ache of goodbye. "I'll miss you too, but we've got this." After Jasmine left, Ryan threw himself into work to keep busy. They talked every day, their calls filled with stories of her new project and his life back home. It wasn't the same as being together, but they made it work. Each call ended with, "I love you." Months passed, and Jasmine's project finally wrapped up. Ryan was counting down the days until she returned. On the day of her flight, he waited at the airport, nervous and excited. When he saw her walking toward him, his heart raced. She dropped her bags and ran into his arms. Jasmine was different, but in the best way. Her confidence had grown, and her passion for photography was stronger than ever. Ryan felt proud of her and grateful to have her back. That night, as they sat on their favorite rooftop, she showed him pictures from her project. He was amazed. As they watched the city lights twinkle, Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Jasmine, you've changed my life," he said, his voice steady but nervous. She looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise. "I want to spend forever with you. Will you marry me?" Jasmine gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she said, laughing through her tears. Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands shaking. They kissed under the stars, the city buzzing around them. For the first time, everything felt right, like they were exactly where they were meant to be. The next few months were a whirlwind of wedding planning and laughter. Max offered to paint a portrait for their big day, and they couldn't say no. On their wedding day, surrounded by friends and family, Ryan and Jasmine promised to love and support each other through whatever came next. Their love story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. They faced challenges and twists they hadn't seen coming, but they held on to each other. Together, they built a life full of laughter, love, and endless possibilities, proving that sometimes the best stories come with unexpected chapters. Ryan and Jasmine settled into their new life together, filled with small joys and everyday adventures. They moved into a cozy apartment with big windows and a tiny balcony where they grew herbs. Ryan loved watching Jasmine tend to the plants while sipping her morning coffee. She looked so peaceful. Max visited often, bringing new paintings to show them and staying for dinner. He'd become a big part of their lives, and Ryan felt lucky to have him around. Sometimes they'd all sit on the balcony, laughing and talking until the stars came out. Those nights felt perfect. One weekend, while going through old boxes, Jasmine found a photo album from her childhood. She showed Ryan pictures of her and Max as kids, their faces smudged with cake or dirt from playing outside. "We had nothing growing up," she said softly, "but we always had each other." Ryan held her close, sensing the bittersweet memories behind her smile. "You've come so far, Jasmine," he said. "Both of you have." She nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. "It wasn't always easy, but I'm grateful for everything that brought us here," she whispered. Ryan kissed her forehead. One day, Jasmine came home looking excited but nervous. "I got an offer to do a gallery show," she said, handing Ryan the flyer. It was a big deal, showcasing her work alongside famous photographers. Ryan grinned. "That's amazing, Jasmine. You deserve this." She smiled but looked unsure. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if people don't like my work?" Ryan took her hands in his. "They will," he said firmly. "You've got talent and heart, and it shows in everything you do. This is your moment." Jasmine nodded, her confidence slowly returning. "Thank you," she whispered. The weeks leading up to the show were busy and exciting. Ryan helped Jasmine frame her photos and organize her display. On the opening night, the gallery buzzed with people admiring her work. Ryan stood by her side, beaming with pride as she greeted visitors and answered their questions. One man stopped in front of a photo of Ryan that Jasmine had taken on one of their first dates. "This one's special," the man said, turning to her. Jasmine smiled. "It is," she said softly. "It's the moment I knew my life was about to change." Ryan's heart swelled. The gallery show was a success, and Jasmine's confidence soared. She began receiving more opportunities, and her career took off. Ryan supported her every step of the way, proud of all she was accomplishing. Their life was busy, but they always made time for each other no matter what. As time passed, they started dreaming about the future. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Jasmine said, "I think I'm ready to take the next step." Ryan looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" She smiled. "I think it's time we start a family." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He'd thought about it too, but hadn't wanted to rush her. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice filled with hope. Jasmine nodded, her eyes shining. "I am. I want to build a life with you, Ryan, one that's full of love and laughter." They began planning for the future, excited and a little nervous. They didn't know what parenthood would bring, but they were ready to face it together. Max joked about being the cool uncle, already planning adventures for the child. The three of them felt closer than ever. Months later, they found out Jasmine was pregnant. Ryan was overjoyed, holding her close as they laughed and cried together. They decorated a small room in their apartment, filling it with soft colors and tiny furniture. Each step brought them closer to the life they'd always dreamed of. When their baby finally arrived, it was the happiest day of their lives. Ryan held their son for the first time, tears streaming down his face. "He's perfect," he whispered. Jasmine smiled, exhausted but radiant. "He's ours," she said, her voice full of wonder. Their family was complete. Life changed in beautiful and chaotic ways after that. Sleepless nights and messy days became the norm, but Ryan and Jasmine embraced every moment. Max visited often, spoiling his nephew with toys and silly games. Their apartment was always filled with laughter and the warmth of love. Ryan often thought about how far they'd come, from that first spilled coffee to the life they'd built together. It wasn't always easy, but every challenge had brought them closer. As he watched Jasmine rock their baby to sleep one night, he knew he'd never been happier. Their story wasn't over, it was just beginning. They had so much to look forward to, so many memories yet to make. But no matter what the future held, Ryan knew one thing for sure. With Jasmine by his side, anything was possible, and life would always be full of love. Jasmine and Ryan's days were now a mix of routines and surprises, as their baby filled every moment with joy and challenges. They named him Flynn, a name that felt warm and full of promise. Flynn had a curious gaze that seemed to study the world, and Ryan often joked he'd grow up to be a scientist or an artist like Jasmine. Jasmine laughed, saying, "Maybe he'll just be himself, and that's enough." Their small apartment seemed to shrink with Flynn's arrival, filled now with baby toys, blankets, and bottles scattered everywhere. Ryan didn't mind. "It's chaos, but it's our chaos," he said one evening as he stepped over a pile of blocks to reach the couch. Jasmine nodded, cuddling Flynn close. "I wouldn't trade it for anything," she said softly, kissing their son's tiny head. Max visited every weekend, bringing gifts for Flynn that Jasmine often insisted were too much. "He doesn't need all this," she'd say as Max grinned. "He needs an uncle who spoils him," Max replied, holding up a colorful stuffed animal. Flynn giggled, his laugh filling the room like sunshine. Ryan and Jasmine exchanged a look, both silently agreeing that Max's love for their son was a gift they couldn't deny. As Flynn grew, so did his curiosity. He loved exploring the apartment, crawling into every corner he could find. Ryan spent his evenings baby-proofing, while Jasmine watched Flynn with a mix of amusement and exhaustion. "We're raising an adventurer," Ryan said, smiling as Flynn tried to climb onto the couch. Jasmine laughed. "Let's just hope he learns to climb safely," she replied. Ryan often found himself reflecting on how much his life had changed. He'd once been a guy who spent his weekends watching movies and meeting friends for coffee. Now, his weekends were filled with park visits and diaper changes, and he loved it. "Being a dad suits you," Jasmine told him one day, watching as he built a block tower for Flynn to knock over. "It feels like what I was meant to do," Ryan said, smiling at her. One day, as they walked through the park, Flynn toddling between them on shaky legs, Ryan felt a wave of gratitude. The trees were turning golden, and the crisp air carried the sound of children laughing. He looked at Jasmine, who was watching Flynn with a proud smile. "I can't believe this is our life," Ryan said quietly. Jasmine turned to him, her eyes soft. "Me neither, but I'm so glad it is." They started talking about finding a bigger place to live. Their apartment, while cozy and filled with memories, was beginning to feel cramped. "I want Flynn to have space to run around," Jasmine said one evening as they discussed their options. Ryan agreed, picturing a little yard where Flynn could play. They began saving and looking at houses, excited for the next chapter of their lives. The search took months, But they finally found a small house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it had everything they needed. 3 bedrooms, a backyard, and a cozy kitchen where Jasmine could bake cookies with Flynn. On moving day, Max showed up early, helping Ryan carry boxes while Flynn played on the lawn. "This place feels right," Max said, glancing around. Ryan nodded, feeling a sense of contentment. "It does." The first night in their new home, they ate pizza on the living room floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes. Flynn crawled between them, fascinated by the empty boxes and crinkling packing paper. Jasmine leaned against Ryan, smiling as Flynn squealed with delight. "This is perfect," she said softly. Ryan kissed her forehead. "It's home," he replied. As they settled into their new life, Jasmine's photography continued to thrive. She set up a small studio in one of the spare bedrooms, filling it with cameras, backdrops, and her favorite photos. Ryan loved watching her work, her passion lighting up her face. "You're amazing at what you do," he told her one evening. She smiled, her cheeks flushing. "I couldn't do it without your support," she said. Ryan's own career was going well too, and he found a new balance between work and family. He started working from home a few days a week, enjoying the extra time he got to spend with Flynn. On those days, Flynn would toddle into Ryan's makeshift office, babbling excitedly. "Future CEO," Ryan joked, lifting Flynn onto his lap. Jasmine laughed from the doorway. "More like future troublemaker," she teased. As Flynn grew older, he began forming his own little personality. He was curious and mischievous, always asking questions or getting into something new. One day, while Jasmine was working in her studio, Flynn found a marker and decided to create his own art on the living room wall. Ryan walked in and froze, staring at the colorful scribbles. "Flynn, what are you doing?" he asked, trying not to laugh. Flynn grinned. "Drawing," he declared proudly. Jasmine rushed in, saw the wall, and covered her mouth to hide a laugh. "Well, he is creative," she said. Ryan sighed, shaking his head. "We'll call it his first masterpiece," he said. That evening, they painted over the wall, laughing about how quickly Flynn was growing up and making his mark, literally, on their lives. The years passed, filled with milestones and memories. Flynn started school, making friends and bringing home stories that made Ryan and Jasmine laugh. He loved sports, especially soccer, and Ryan spent weekends coaching his little league team. Watching Flynn run across the field, his face lit with determination, filled Ryan with pride. "He's got your focus," Jasmine said, cheering from the sidelines. Their family grew even closer over time, and Max remained a constant presence. He had turned his life around completely, running a small art studio where he taught kids how to paint. "You inspired me," Max told Jasmine one day during a family dinner. "Seeing you never give up on your dreams made me want to chase mine." Jasmine hugged him tightly, her eyes shining with emotion. As Flynn grew older, Ryan and Jasmine found themselves reflecting on their journey. They often stayed up late after Flynn was asleep, talking about the twists and turns that had brought them together. "I never thought life would turn out like this," Ryan said one night, holding Jasmine's hand. "But I'm so glad it did." Jasmine smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Me too," she said. Life wasn't always easy, but Ryan and Jasmine faced every challenge together. They celebrated the big moments and cherished the small ones, always grateful for the love they'd built. Flynn continued to grow, filling their lives with laughter and surprises. Through it all, their bond only deepened, a testament to the power of love, family, and the belief that they could overcome anything together. Ryan and Jasmine loved watching Flynn grow. Every year brought something new. His first time riding a bike, his first school play, and the endless questions about how the world worked. Why is the sky blue? Why do cats purr? Flynn would ask wide-eyed. Ryan would try his best to explain, though sometimes his answers were met with a skeptical, "Really, Dad?" One weekend, they took Flynn to the zoo for the first time. He ran from exhibit to exhibit, shouting in excitement at every animal he saw. "Look, a tiger," he yelled, pressing his face against the glass. Jasmine laughed as she snapped pictures of him. Ryan stood back, watching them both, his heart full. At home that night, Flynn drew pictures of all the animals he had seen, carefully explaining each one to Ryan and Jasmine. "This is a giraffe and this is a penguin," he said, holding up his crayon drawings. "You're quite the artist," Ryan said, ruffling Flynn's hair. Jasmine smiled. "Maybe he gets it from Max." Flynn adored his Uncle Max, and the feeling was mutual. Max would visit with art supplies, encouraging Flynn to paint or draw. One day, Max brought over a canvas and set it up in the backyard. "Let's make something big," he told Flynn. They spent the afternoon creating a colorful masterpiece, their laughter echoing through the yard. When Flynn started first grade, Ryan and Jasmine were nervous, but excited for him. They walked him to school hand in hand, their hearts aching as they watched him wave goodbye and disappear into the classroom. "He's going to be fine," Jasmine said, squeezing Ryan's hand. Ryan nodded, though his chest felt tight. After school, Flynn came running out, his face lit up with excitement. "I made a friend," he shouted, holding up a picture he'd drawn with another boy. "His name is Charlie, and he likes dinosaurs." Ryan and Jasmine exchanged a relieved smile. "Sounds like a great start," Ryan said, hugging Flynn tightly. As Flynn grew, Ryan and Jasmine realized how much he was teaching them too. He had a way of seeing the world with wonder and curiosity that they'd forgotten as adults. One evening, as they watched a thunderstorm from the porch, Flynn whispered, "It's like the sky is talking." Ryan smiled. "Maybe it is." Their new house became a place of warmth and memories. They celebrated birthdays, holidays, and everything in between, always finding ways to make each moment special. Flynn loved Christmas the most, helping Jasmine decorate cookies and hanging ornaments on the tree. "This one's my favorite," he said, holding up a star, "because it's the brightest." Ryan often thought about how lucky they were. His love for Jasmine had only grown over the years, deepened by the life they'd built together. One night, as they lay in bed, he said, "I don't know what I did to deserve you." Jasmine smiled, brushing a hand through his hair. "You loved me," she said simply. Their life wasn't without challenges, but they faced them together. When Flynn got sick with the flu one winter, Ryan and Jasmine took turns staying up with him, worrying over every cough and fever. "He'll be okay," Jasmine said, though her eyes were tired. Ryan nodded, holding her close. "He's tough, like his mom." Flynn recovered quickly, bouncing back with his usual energy. I don't like being sick, he told Ryan one morning, sitting up in bed. Ryan laughed. Nobody does, buddy. But you were really brave. Flynn smiled proudly. Like a superhero? Ryan grinned. Exactly like a superhero. As the years went on, Flynn started to develop his own interests and dreams. He loved reading about space, telling anyone who would listen that he wanted to be an astronaut. Ryan and Jasmine encouraged him, filling his room with books about planets and stars. Reach for the stars, Ryan told him one night, literally. Max remained a big part of their lives, and his art studio continued to thrive. One summer, he invited Flynn to a kids' art camp he was hosting. Flynn came home every day covered in paint, his face lit with excitement. Uncle Max says I'm really good, he told Ryan and Jasmine. They smiled, proud of how confident Flynn was becoming. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Flynn asked, "Do you think I can really go to space one day?" Ryan and Jasmine exchanged a look, their hearts full of love for this little boy with such big dreams. "We know you can," Jasmine said firmly, "if you work hard and never give up." Ryan often thought about how fast time was passing. It felt like just yesterday Flynn had taken his first steps, and now he was talking about the future with so much excitement. "Don't grow up too fast," Ryan said one night as he tucked Flynn into bed. Flynn grinned. "I'll try, Dad." Even with the busy pace of life, Ryan and Jasmine always found time for each other. They'd sneak away for date nights, laughing like they had when they first met. One evening, as they danced in the kitchen to an old song, Ryan said, "You're still my favorite person." Jasmine smiled, her eyes soft. "And you're mine." Their family wasn't perfect, but it was filled with love. They supported each other through every triumph and challenge, always finding reasons to laugh. Ryan often thought about how different his life could have been if he hadn't met Jasmine that day at the coffee shop. Fate knew what it was doing, he'd say. One summer they took a road trip, visiting national parks and small towns. Flynn loved the adventure, pointing out every mountain and river they passed. At night, they camped under the stars, telling stories around a fire. "This is the best trip ever," Flynn declared, his face glowing in the firelight. Ryan and Jasmine agreed. Life continued to move forward, bringing new memories and milestones. Flynn entered middle school, growing taller and more independent every day. Ryan and Jasmine watched with pride and a tinge of sadness, knowing their little boy was becoming his own person. "He's going to do amazing things," Ryan said. Jasmine nodded, her heart full. Through it all, their love remained the foundation of everything. Ryan and Jasmine never stopped supporting each other, cheering each other on in their dreams and adventures. They knew that no matter what the future held, they'd face it together, just as they always had. And that was all they needed. Flynn's teenage years brought new adventures and challenges for the family. He joined the school soccer team, spending hours at practice and coming home with stories about his teammates. "Coach says I'm getting better," Flynn said one evening, his cheeks flushed with excitement. Ryan smiled. "You've always been good. You're just learning to be great." Ryan and Jasmine became the loudest cheerleaders at every game, standing on the sidelines and shouting encouragement. Flynn would grin whenever he heard them, even if he pretended to be embarrassed. "You're so loud," he'd tease after the game. "That's our job," Jasmine replied with a laugh. "We're your biggest fans." Balancing school, soccer, and family time wasn't always easy, but Flynn managed with his parents' support. Ryan helped him with math homework at the kitchen table while Jasmine cooked dinner, the smell of spices filling the air. "I don't get this problem," Flynn would say, frustrated. Ryan would smile. "Let's figure it out together." As Flynn grew older, he started to spend more time with his friends, often going out on weekends. Ryan and Jasmine missed the days when he'd stay home, but they knew it was part of growing up. "He's finding his way," Jasmine said one night as they watched Flynn leave for a party. Ryan nodded. "And we'll always be here when he needs us." One summer, Flynn got his first job, working part-time at a local bookstore. He loved being surrounded by books and often came home with stories about the customers he met. "This old lady comes in every week and tells me about her cats," he said, laughing. Ryan grinned. "Sounds like she found the right person to talk to." Flynn's job also sparked a new hobby: writing. He started filling notebooks with short stories and ideas for novels, often asking Ryan and Jasmine for feedback. "This one's about a soccer player who becomes an astronaut," he said one evening, handing Ryan a draft. Ryan read it carefully, his chest swelling with pride. "You've got talent, Flynn." Jasmine encouraged Flynn's creativity, helping him set up a little writing corner in his room. "Every writer needs a good space," she said, hanging a small corkboard for his notes. Flynn smiled. "Thanks, Mom." Watching him pour his heart into his stories reminded Jasmine of her own journey with photography. "Follow your passion," she told him. "It'll take you places." Max remained a constant presence in their lives, often stopping by for dinner or weekend visits. Flynn loved talking to him about art and asking for advice on creative projects. "Uncle Max always knows the coolest stuff," Flynn said one evening, showing Ryan a painting Max had given him. Ryan smiled. "He's pretty great, isn't he?" As the years passed, Ryan and Jasmine found themselves reflecting more on the life they'd built. They often sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the stars and talking about their hopes for Flynn's future. "He's got so much potential," Ryan said one night. Jasmine nodded. "I just want him to be happy." Their love for each other remained strong, even as life changed around them. They celebrated their anniversary every year with small gestures, like cooking dinner together or revisiting the coffee shop where they'd first met. "Can you believe it's been this long?" Ryan would ask. Jasmine smiled. "Time flies when you're with the right person." One winter, Flynn surprised them by writing a story about their family. It was a heartfelt tale about love, growth, and the importance of sticking together. "This is amazing," Jasmine said, tears in her eyes as she read it. Ryan nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "You captured us perfectly, Flynn." As Flynn prepared for his final year of high school, Ryan and Jasmine felt a mix of pride and nostalgia. It feels like yesterday he was learning to walk, Ryan said one morning as they watched Flynn pack his soccer bag. Jasmine smiled wistfully. And now he's getting ready to fly. Flynn's senior year was a whirlwind of events, soccer tournaments, college applications, and his first serious relationship. Ryan and Jasmine offered advice when asked, but gave him space to navigate his own path. "You've raised me well," Flynn said one evening, surprising them both. "I always know you're there for me." When Flynn was accepted to a university out of state, the family celebrated with pride and a touch of sadness. "We're going to miss you," Jasmine said, hugging him tightly. Flynn smiled. "I'll miss you too, but it's not goodbye. Just a new chapter." Ryan nodded, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "We're so proud of you." The day Flynn left for college was bittersweet. Ryan and Jasmine helped him pack the car, giving him advice and hugs before he drove off. "Call us every week," Ryan said, his voice light but firm. Flynn laughed. "I will, Dad." As they watched him drive away, Jasmine rested her head on Ryan's shoulder. "Our little boy is growing up," she said softly. The house felt quieter without Flynn, but Ryan and Jasmine adjusted to their new normal. They focused on their own hobbies, with Jasmine taking on new photography projects and Ryan exploring cooking. "I'm trying a new recipe tonight," Ryan said one evening. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" she teased. They visited Flynn whenever they could, bringing him homemade meals and catching up on his life. Flynn seemed happy and thriving, sharing stories about his classes and new friends. "I'm working on a novel," he told them during one visit. "It's about family and finding your place in the world." Ryan smiled. "Sounds familiar." As time went on, Ryan and Jasmine found new ways to enjoy their time together. They traveled to places they'd always dreamed of, taking long walks and soaking in the beauty of the world. "This is what life's about," Ryan said one evening as they watched the sunset over a beach. Jasmine nodded, her hand in his. Moments like this. Their love remained the foundation of their lives, guiding them through every stage. Whether they were celebrating Flynn's achievements, supporting each other's dreams, or simply sharing quiet evenings at home, they knew they were lucky to have found each other. For Ryan and Jasmine, love wasn't just a feeling. It was the life they had built together, one day at a time. Flynn's time at college brought a new rhythm to Ryan and Jasmine's lives. They missed him deeply, but loved hearing about his adventures and accomplishments. Every phone call was a window into his new world. "I joined the writing club," Flynn said one evening, his voice full of excitement. "We share stories every week." Ryan smiled, picturing his son thriving. "I can't wait to read what you've been working on." Ryan and Jasmine found themselves reflecting on the quieter house. The once bustling living room now held traces of Flynn's childhood, his soccer trophies, a worn-out blanket he'd loved, and the family photos that line the walls. "It's strange without him," Jasmine said one evening, her voice soft. Ryan nodded, squeezing her hand. "But he's doing what he's meant to do. That's all we ever wanted." They decided to keep busy, taking on new projects and exploring interests they'd set aside while raising Flynn. Ryan enrolled in a cooking class, determined to master more than just spaghetti and toast. "I want to surprise you," he told Jasmine one evening as he attempted a risotto. She laughed as she tasted it. "You're full of surprises," she said, smiling. Jasmine's photography took her in exciting directions. She started a series capturing life in their small town, focusing on everyday moments that often went unnoticed. "There's beauty in the ordinary," she told Ryan, showing him her latest shots. He admired her work, amazed at how she could turn simple scenes into something extraordinary. "You've always had a gift," he said, kissing her forehead. One weekend, Flynn surprised them by coming home for a visit. He brought a stack of papers, his latest story draft, and asked Ryan and Jasmine to read it. "Be honest," he said, sitting nervously as they flipped through the pages. The story was about a young man finding his way while staying connected to his roots. Ryan and Jasmine finished reading, their eyes misty. "It's beautiful," Jasmine said, hugging Flynn tightly. "You've put your heart into this." Flynn's visits became a highlight for Ryan and Jasmine, filling the house with laughter and stories again. They'd sit around the kitchen table, talking for hours about life, dreams, and the future. "I'm thinking about studying abroad next year," Flynn said one evening, his eyes shining with possibility. Ryan felt a pang of both pride and sadness. "That's an incredible opportunity," he said, his voice steady. When Flynn left again, the house felt quiet, but Ryan and Jasmine leaned on each other. "We've done our job," Ryan said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the stars. Jasmine nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. "And we did it well?" she replied. They knew their love and support had given Flynn the foundation he needed to chase his dreams. Months turned into years, and Flynn's world continued to grow. He spent a semester in Europe, sending postcards filled with stories about the places he visited. "Paris is magical," he wrote. "You'd love the art here, Mom." Jasmine held each postcard close, imagining Flynn walking through the streets, soaking in the culture. "He's living his dream," she said to Ryan, her heart swelling with pride. Ryan and Jasmine took their own trip to Europe, inspired by Flynn's letters. They walked through cobblestone streets, visited art galleries, and shared quiet dinners in bustling cafes. "This feels like a second honeymoon," Ryan said, holding Jasmine's hand as they strolled along a canal. She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "It's even better because it's us." When Flynn graduated college, it was a proud moment for the entire family. Ryan and Jasmine sat in the audience, cheering loudly as Flynn walked across the stage. That's our boy, Ryan whispered, his chest swelling with emotion. After the ceremony, they hugged Flynn tightly, their hearts full. You did it, Jasmine said, tears in her eyes. Flynn's post-graduation plans took him to a city a few hours away, where he landed a job as an editor at a small publishing house. Ryan and Jasmine helped him settle into his new apartment, marveling at how quickly he was building a life of his own. It feels like just yesterday we were helping him with his homework, Ryan said, shaking his head. Jasmine smiled. Now he's helping others tell their stories. They visited Flynn often, bringing homemade meals and spending weekends exploring the city with him. One day, Flynn introduced them to a woman named Julie, his new girlfriend. She was warm and kind, and Ryan and Jasmine could see how happy she made Flynn. She's lovely, Jasmine said afterward. Ryan nodded. I can see why he's smitten. Julie quickly became a part of their family, joining them for holidays and special occasions. Ryan and Jasmine loved seeing how Flynn blossomed with her by his side. She pushes me to be better, Flynn said one evening, his voice full of admiration. Ryan smiled, remembering how Jasmine had always done the same for him. That's how you know it's real, he said. As the years passed, Ryan and Jasmine found themselves stepping into new roles as Flynn's cheerleaders from afar. They celebrated every milestone: his first promotion, his engagement to Julie, and eventually, the birth of their first grandchild. We're grandparents, Ryan said one evening, holding the tiny baby in his arms. Jasmine laughed, her eyes shining. And I think we're pretty good at it. Their family continued to grow, filled with laughter, love, and countless memories. Ryan and Jasmine often reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. They knew life would always have its twists and turns, but their love had been the constant that carried them through. Together, they had built a life full of meaning, and they wouldn't have changed a thing. One evening, many years later, Ryan and Jasmine sat on the same porch where they had spent so many quiet moments together. The stars were bright.